Hello and welcome to Flying 180 Motorsports. Today is April 19th and I'm quarantined. And I'm not alone. I am quarantined with a special guest, as the title mentions. We have Nick from F1 and Coffee Podcast. Nick, what's shaking?
Just ready to get back to a normal life again. Get some racing, get some sports.
I think we were debating before. Well, not really debate, but I think your stash is definitely a little bit older than my stash. The razors are getting rusty, but
About as much as it grows in, though. So,
but we are live on YouTube, as everyone knows. So I'm going to tweet this out to everybody. So bear with me 1 second, and then we will start getting into it. All right. Boom. All right. So that's been sent out. You know, I admittedly stopped doing my weekly broadcasts on Friday with the weekend schedules, which were doing pretty well. And I think it came more from, and this was back in October, November last year, and I just got depressed. You know, it was a very busy season last season. And then all of a sudden you hit a wall and it's like, boom, nothing. You know, all the racing genres just come to a wind down and just done. So definitely depressing, to say the least. But then things start to come around. You start to see some racing genres around the world start to maybe little things starting to trickle back into play, and then boom, again we get hit with
coronavirus,
a global pandemic. So, needless to say, I think this is maybe a segue, and I hope you don't mind. Maybe I'll take the lead on the first little topic. But actually, before we even do that, you know what, Nick? What I want you to do is, and you've been on a broadcast with me before, but for those viewers who may not be familiar or haven't seen you in a little bit, just please introduce yourself. Tell everybody about your podcast, where to find your podcast, and all that jazz. I'm sorry.
So I'm Nick from F1 and Coffee, f1andcoffee.com, Twitter at F1 Coffee, YouTube, we're everywhere. We talk about a lot of racing, but primarily just F1. We do live broadcasts during the races, which obviously we're not doing now. We thought about doing it for the virtual Grand Prix this year, but to be honest, they're just not that fun to watch.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been kind of a slow year in that regard, and we're just looking forward to having some races again at some point.
That's actually what I was going to segue into, and you just touched on it, which is the virtual Grand Prix. I mean, let's maybe break it down a little bit, because you have all the different iRacing genres, and then you have the virtual Grand Prix, right? So I mean, they're all kind of pulled together a little bit. But when you say you're not really maybe digging it, is there one that you're not digging over another, or altogether you're just not on board with any of the virtual racing, whether it be, stock car racing or...
Well, so I've only watched 2 F1
right
virtual Grand Prix.
Right.
And it's just, I mean, it's okay. It's better than nothing. Graphics are fantastic. I'm still going to watch it, but I don't like that there's no damage. I mean, you could drive right. I mean, Leclerc drove over a car today and there was no issue.
Right.
Just little things like that. There's no penalties for making mistakes.
Well, yeah. Well, there is damage in the IndyCar one and NASCAR.
I don't know why Formula One doesn't do that. Then they should. It would make it a lot better.
Yeah. You know, it's really tricky when you go to learn sim racing, how it's very much the same and very much different. Have you done any sim racing recently or no?
No, I have not.
Okay. I think the biggest for me, when I'm racing, I think the biggest factor is what kind of grip you get when you're on the curbing, right?
Mhm.
So when you get into the rumple strips and the curbing and so on, the car you would think perform the way you see it perform in real races where guys are able to maintain a line and get through and so on. If you add the slightest bit of throttle while you have two wheels on the rumple strip,
Mhm.
the car will just fishtail off and go
Huh.
veer off into a wall. So you lose all traction. If you add throttle, if you maintain throttle, you're okay. But as soon as you try to accelerate with two wheels on a curbing, I think sim racing really accentuates what the results of that are going to be
Hmm.
compared to what you might witness in a real race, you know.
Yeah.
But I know that from watching the IMSA racing and the IndyCar racing and NASCAR, they are utilizing damage, and then in order to fix the damage, you can either race with the damage, which would affect aero and so on, could affect your speed, or you can just reset the car to pit lane and then fix it from there and then take off from pit lane. So um, it's yeah.
Yeah.
You
Not
know,
really,
but
not really a fan of that. You should be out of the race if you crash.
I know, but listen, you have to. There's so many ways to think about it. Like I'm thinking, at first I was like, wait, what are they doing? Why are they doing that? And then I took a step back and said, you know what? In order to make this as attractive as possible for the fans who would otherwise have nothing right now,
Yeah.
they're kind of tweaking, they're kind of playing with it as they go, right?
Yeah. I mean,
So
more cars on the race, more action theoretically.
more cars, more professional racers, more names that you recognize,
Yeah.
you know. So um, I'm uh, I'm a fan. I'm a fan of it. I think it's a good thing. I think it keeps the camaraderie of the racing teams and drivers going. You know, I think
Yeah.
it's good in that sense. I think it's good because it gives the fans something to watch. At first, initially, I was like, you know, why are all the drivers as they're in the middle of this race? Why are they joking around? They're all laughing at each other, and you know, but that dropped off immensely after maybe the first week or two, after the first virtual race, and then
Mhm.
other genres started to jump in, and then other racers were like, I want to get into this, you know, I want to join you guys, it looks like fun.
Yeah.
And then it became like that natural competitive juice started flowing in a lot of these guys, and then the sort of like the joking around calmed down, you know. And then it became more serious. And now I saw a race the other day, a NASCAR race with was it a NASCAR race? It was Dale Earnhardt Jr. I think he was racing an IndyCar. He jumped into one of the IndyCar races, but he was the video. It was a live video of the race from the viewpoint of his spotter, who was
Hmm.
communicating with Dale during the race, and they were dead serious the
So they
whole
still,
race.
so they still have spotters in
Yeah.
the. Huh.
So the spotter, what the spotter's allowed to do, like the racer when the racer's in the car racing, he has the cockpit view, right? So you see the you see it as if you were sitting in the car. The spotter is able to change the camera so it's above and behind, almost like a helicopter follow view.
Hmm.
So he can see the whole track, but you know, ahead, behind, and he can kind of communicate with the car and say, "There's a guy coming up high on your, you know, high on your outside, and he's still there, you know, and now you're clear." And so it was pretty cool because they were monitoring, you know, that from that standpoint, but they were also the spotter. It was the spotter's job to monitor who was pitting when they were pitting of the other cars on the track. So Dale knew whether he wanted to stay out, come in, you know, like there was a lot of strategy involved, and they were dead serious about it. I mean, they were dead serious. And then
It's good.
listening to some of the other cars, they were dead serious about it too. So it's good to see that the racers are really taking it seriously and making the most out of it and trying to really give the fans a little bit more insight to the focus that's necessary for a sport like this.
Yeah. Yeah, and mean, they're probably bored out of their minds for the most part, and then, this is a little bit of action they get to do, every week, and
Yeah.
have a little bit of fun.
Yeah. Yep. But you're not a fan.
I mean, I'm gonna
I can
watch
tell
it,
the excitement level is
but
like
it's
dialed down.
it's not my favorite.
Right.
Now, if I had a rig in my house,
Right.
maybe I would see it differently.
Right.
I've been told no on the rig, so.
Right. So tell me, what have you been like? Kind of had your finger on the pulse of during this time off from racing? Like, what are you watching? What are you waiting for? What are you kind of following?
Not a whole lot, to be honest. We haven't done. There's just not a lot going on. That's,
Right.
I can only watch so much virtual racing, and
Right.
and I've watched 2 races so far, and that's it.
Right. I know. When we were communicating off camera, we were talking. You mentioned briefly the passing of Stirling Moss, obviously,
Mhm.
and then we had Bud Lazier the other day. Former Indy 500 winner, but 90 years old. I mean, that's a good run.
Pretty good life.
It's a shame when you see someone like a legend like that go, and you think of how much of an impact this guy had in the racing world, and all the events and all the people he inspired. This guy was a true ambassador of the sport. I mean, this guy was out there just representing the sport incredibly well.
Yeah. I mean, all types of motorsport. He did. I don't even know how many different types of racing he did, but he did a lot of different, a lot of different motorsport categories, and just like you said, just a great ambassador for motorsport in general.
Yeah. What's your if it's not a virtual Grand Prix in F1, what are the forms of racing? Maybe we haven't touched on this, but what other forms of racing do you follow personally?
I mean, F1's the main thing. I follow MotoGP and Indy.
Yeah.
About 30%.
Yeah.
But yeah, F1's primarily it.
Do you subscribe to any like viewing packages?
Yeah, all the F1.com, F1 TV, all that stuff.
You do, yeah.
They've got a ton of great content. They did last year. They really stepped it up. First year was kind of a disaster.
Right.
A lot of glitches, a lot of issues. But this past year, they really stepped it up, and the quality was great. They added tons of content. There's tons of documentaries out there.
Oh, really?
They've done a really good job.
This was all with F1 TV?
Mm-hmm.
Now, tell me a little bit more, because usually on my weekly broadcasts, like scheduled broadcasts, I touch upon the viewing schedules for the week, for the upcoming weekend, for MotorTrendOnDemand.com and also MotorsportTV.com. So, like, I know my viewers are sick of me mentioning, like, I'm always praising those 2 services, and they both kind of specialize in showcasing different genres of racing every week.
Mm-hmm.
But with F1 TV, what are some of the features? Like, do they save all the races from the season? Do they have different camera views of each car? Like, I'm going to pull it up right now, but
I don't think you can get the car views on old races. I think from this past season you can, but prior to that, I don't think they had that. But they've got kind of reviews of every race. They've got a lot of full races going back to. I mean, I've gone back as far as.
Let me see if I can pull this up here.
I've gone back to the 80s.
Really?
So they're constantly adding more and more. The first year they only went back to 2000 or 2001 or something like that.
Right.
But they go back. They've added 10 or 15 years in the past year, at least.
Right.
So it's pretty cool seeing some of the old races.
Yeah, it says subscribe. Yeah, F1 Rewind. You can go back and watch full. So when it says that, you can actually go back and watch a full Grand Prix, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, all of them, they've got kind of a short review, and then they've got a lot of full races.
And then they have like documentaries and features.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what does an F1 strategist do?
Yeah,
Charles Leclerc on the road. The history, pretty cool. The
And
greatest races.
a lot of these videos are 40 minutes an hour. I mean, they're not 2 minute clips. They're legitimate documentaries.
Right,
It's
right.
pretty cool.
That's awesome.
Big fan.
What is the because I subscribed to the MotoGP one in the past, and I would consider this going forward. What are they? See, it says 2020 season up here. Let's see what they say. Yeah, they're just canceling it as they go,
Yeah.
as they announce it. What is the package for the season?
I think the normal price is maybe $100, but they always run specials. So I think the first time you subscribe, it's maybe $50,
Oh, really?
and yeah,
For
so
the whole season?
for the whole season. So like last year, it was $50, but they refunded. They had 4 issues throughout the season, so they
Right.
refunded $5 each time. So it ended up costing $30 for the entire year,
Right.
which $30 for the year is pretty good price. Pretty
Right,
happy
right.
with that.
That's really good. That's what the MotoGP one is also. It's
It's
like
not
right
bad.
around $50. Um, just tweeting out again. The and that's kind of what I like about Motor Trend on Demand, is that just as the name states, you get a lot of stuff on demand. You can go back and watch an archive.
Yeah.
The race series, any race series, any racing genre, you can go back and watch any race from like the 2019 season, or sometimes even the 2018 season, including the current seasons. So if you don't catch a race live as they stream it, then you have to wait before it shows up in the archive. Um, but it's a nice service. I think that's about $49. But you're getting like access to like dozens and dozens of racing genres, which is
Yeah.
cool. You know,
Very
very
cool.
cool. Yeah, and I guess MotoGP is kind of in the same boat here. They're doing the same thing. They're canceling races. I mean, one of the other topics to touch on is I'm sure, as you've read, even with F1, with NASCAR, with IndyCar, with MotoGP, they're playing even with other sports, basketball,
Mhm.
hockey. They've thrown around the thought of possibly holding a race with no fans in attendance. What are your
I,
thoughts on that?
I don't think that'll happen. You still have everyone in the paddock, everyone and all the pit crews. I mean, you've got hundreds of people there. I think it's, at least right now, it's still way too risky. But that could change in 2 months. Who
Yeah,
knows? I don't suspect to see that happen, but never say never.
I know. The one part of this, the one piece of this is that there's no. You hear about, I guess, certain treatments, certain medication that is muting some of the effects of the virus.
Mhm.
And I think for a lot of people that that would be enough to get things going. And I would probably be on board with that. If there was a medication like right now, this is across the board. If you took a median percentage of people who are actually dying from this virus,
Mhm.
from COVID-19, it's between 4 and 6%. So between 4 and 6% of people that contract it are dying from it. And now, obviously, those percentages are higher based on people who are senior citizens, who are immune compromised, who are cardiac patients, and then that percentage rises to about 14% mortality rate. You know, so which is crazy.
Yeah,
Um,
that's scary.
then obviously, there's a million different circumstances there, but that would be the most extreme situation. So, but then of course, the media likes to play upon all those,
Scare tactics.
yeah, all those stories that go against the grain. That like, oh well, there was a guy in his 20s who was an Olympic athlete, no pre-existing conditions, he got it and he died. you know, or this guy's 40 years old. But here in New York, I know that it's 80% of all emergency room admissions are men
Hmm.
or guys, not girls. 80% are
Huh.
men.
Interesting.
So it's a little scary from that aspect. And then you get people who are really sick. They go on ventilators, and then it's a very high percentage. Something like 90% of people who go on ventilators do not come off of them.
Huh.
So those are the most extreme cases, though. Those are the most extreme cases. Um, Scary stuff. So with all that still existing out there, and then and that's still happening as we speak right now. So for me, listening to this from a daily news perspective, and then you hear then it going outward, you hear the governor speak, then you hear the president speak, and then you see on the news people in Florida gathering at a beach in the thousands. You're like, oh my God, really?
Yeah.
It's like, how?
Where are
So
their brains? They have no brains.
I, you know, but yeah, I would agree with you. I think it's too early to execute any type of or open the doors for things like this.
I mean, you got 100,000 people at
Right,
the track, plus all the staff and all the teams and everybody. And it's
right.
just high likelihood of, if something were to happen, if somebody showed up that had it, it could spread like wildfire.
Exactly. See, that's the thing, is that if there's still like a between 4 and 6% fatality, right?
Mhm.
Say they allow spectators, and it's 100,000 people. Like what's acceptable to the racing to the organization. So what? They have a race. Say the next race they go to wherever. What's the next race supposed to schedule that? That's still on the calendar
It
that
was
has been
supposed to
canceled.
be China today, actually. The
China.
next one would have been the Dutch Grand Prix.
So say they decide, okay, you know what, we're going to hold the Dutch Grand Prix with spectators. They hold that race, right? They hold that race. And then they've realized that from that race, because that's the only event that a lot of people maybe left their homes for to go to, that 100 people died.
Yeah.
Is that what they're waiting to have? Like, I don't understand the mentality of how it's even a consideration.
I don't know. I mean, it's the balance between the economic impact versus the medical impact. It's how do you balance that, and at what point does it become acceptable to take more risk but get the economies going again?
See,
It's,
that's true. And then then I guess from their standpoint, they could always say these people who attended willfully did so.
yeah.
It was their decision. They paid the money. They wanted to come.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm not going to any races anytime soon.
There's no way.
Thanks.
There's no way.
We got TVs. I'll watch it on TV. I'm good.
Yeah, I don't get it. I don't get it. So, what have you been doing with your excess time? How are you burning the days away?
I haven't had a whole lot of excess time, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Been going to the office pretty much every day,
Right.
working from home maybe 2 days a week.
Right.
Been in the office the rest of the time. It's a challenging time for sure.
Yeah. I know that it's the mental side of this is probably what's wearing most people down.
Yeah.
People who haven't spent this much time in their home ever, and for people who live in a colder climate, I know here in New York the weather's still bouncing between like the high 40s and the low 50s.
Mhm.
On the forecast, it looks like maybe within a couple of weeks we might get to high 50s, low 60s. But you can't really go bike riding. You can't go swimming. You can't really do a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
So you're close to getting that. So
Well, in Atlanta, we've had some of the most beautiful weather the past month that we've had in the spring in years,
really,
and you can't do anything. Nothing's open. I mean, you
right.
still got to just stay home, and it's like, man, I just want to go outside and play golf or play tennis or
Well,
just be outside. You're on people.
here's the thing. Like, you could, like, in the golf, see, I was thinking, like, I was thinking along the same thing. Like if I went bike riding with my son, you're not really, you can control how far, how close you are to or far you are from another rider,
Yeah.
right? Golf course, it's not like you're gonna be playing through people. You just take your time, maintain your distance.
And plan 12 hours.
Hey, listen, I just trying to think of, anything to maintain the sanity.
Yeah, it's
The
ongoing challenge for sure.
Yeah, I know. So, what do you have in the foreseeable future as far as what are you doing to satisfy your racing sort of urge? If you're not into the virtual stuff as much as the iRacing, are
I'm
you
not.
watching archives? Because there are a lot of archive races that are showing up on like YouTube.
I do watch a fair amount of those,
Right,
but I'm not really getting the fix I need from F1.
right.
But that's all right. I mean, rather everyone be safe than sorry, and we can wait it out.
You know, I know maybe the wife hasn't approved your racing rig, but a lot of those are just a wheel that you clip to a table. And it's not like a. Are you thinking of when you say rig? Are you envisioning like the whole sit down racing seat with a? Yeah, you want the bad boy, don't you?
I want the badass one. 3 screens, everything.
Yeah.
The problem is I would play
Those
it every
things.
day for about a week or two, and then
Yeah.
I'd probably never play it again.
Well, you'd probably play longer than that. I think it would be. You know what? When you have access to tracks that you would otherwise not have access to, you're racing in those. You're racing those all day long. You're going to be in that for months, just knocking laps out. I just I was in I took an Australian V8 supercar and I put it on I was just doing a test session on iRacing at Lime Rock. So I was just seeing how, what I could get my lap time down and then in a V8 supercar at Lime Rock. So I was able to get into like 53.1, which I don't know.
Is that
I don't
good?
know. I think it's okay. I know if anyone were to watch this, they'd be like, "Dude, that sucks." But
But it's a better time for you than you had done previously.
oh yes,
So
yes,
that's all
yes,
that
yes.
matters. It's
Yeah, I think
beating
that's
yourself from yesterday.
yes. It's nice when you go back and after a session and you look at your lap times,
Mhm.
and it just goes from like 57 to 56 and a half to 56 to 55 and a half to 55,
Yeah.
to 54 to 53.
Small
So
changes every lap. Just get a little bit better each time.
I think burning off the fuel helps and getting the tires warm helps, and it all comes together for you,
Yeah, definitely.
But it definitely feels good doing that. Any particular news that you've heard or watched or observed in the recent week or two that struck you?
Other than Stirling Moss, I mean, like you said, he was 90 years old, lived a great life. Did a lot of things for the sport, but no, I mean, there just hasn't been that much going on that's not
Right.
COVID-19 related. It's,
I thought of you the other day because I know some of the race series are really itching to figure out ways to get everything kind of kicked in again.
yeah,
And one of the things that now is because if they do get kicked in, everyone's looking at a shorter season. So they're thinking about how to make the best of it.
yeah.
And now I know we had talked about this last time we broadcasted together. Is now they're seriously figuring out how to do a doubleheader. Right?
Now that's a pretty good idea. I like that.
Yeah. Everything's on the table now. This forces people to consider everything on the table.
I'd like to see him do some tracks backwards.
That's a great idea. But the safety gear
Well,
would have to be tweaked for the other rotation for track. I don't
We'd
know.
really like to see Spa backwards.
That's pretty cool.
Going down Eau Rouge.
Yeah. The backwards.
Yeah. Because you're coming off that straight with so much speed. I mean, after what happened last year, it's zero likelihood of them even considering something that crazy. But
That's
it would be
that's
awesome.
a pure safety concern.
They could do it in the virtual world, though.
Oh, 100%.
Like, they should definitely do that.
Good idea. I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. That's a good one. But yeah, doubleheader, man. Imagine like a NASCAR, IndyCar, and I think they were talking about doing that like almost every week of the remaining races. So
that'd be cool.
Yeah, that would be pretty good. Tell me, Nick, anything else? Anything else that's itching you? Anything else? Any other itch you want to scratch?
Nah, just want to get back to a regular life again.
Yeah.
Or at least somewhat regular.
As soon as the racing starts again, what's the very first thing you're going to binge watch? Like, what's the first thing you're just going to be addicted to? F1?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And tell me, what's going on with the F1 and Coffee podcast? How's that going? Are you still doing that on a regular basis?
Not really on that regular of a basis. We're doing one, every 2 to 3 weeks right now. Nothing. Right. They're a lot shorter, 15, 20 minutes, short episodes, something you can listen to, driving to the grocery store and back or something.
Right.
Just something to keep updates going and keep everyone interested.
Right.
I think people are kind of like, they're in their houses, they're bored, they need something.
Right.
So we're just we can provide any kind of, small entertainment, any kind of value for them. That's what we want to do. So.
And do me a favor, for the people who will be watching this, tell us again how can they access the F1 and Coffee podcast?
We are on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify. I think that's it.
Yeah.
YouTube, everywhere.
Good stuff. Very cool. All right, my man. Anything else? Did we forget anything? Anything you want to add?
No, this is good. Appreciate you inviting me to come on tonight.
Of course. What else we got going on? I mean, what the...
Fair enough.
No. Listen, I it's always good to take these topics and get different viewpoints, and just throw them around.
Yeah.
And so I appreciate you joining. Thank you very much for hanging out. It's always good to see you. Yeah. And hopefully we'll do it again in the near future. As soon as we hear that someone is thinking about starting something up, we'll jump back in here and kick it around.
Cool. Sounds like a plan, Chris.
All right, man. Thank you to everyone for joining. Well, no one joined live, but someone will join. Someone will watch the replay. But hope everyone has a good evening. Thank you very much.